Welcome to the Operate Podcast, where we give you a behind-the-scenes look at company building from the perspective of the builders themselves. This is how we operate.
Welcome to the Operate Podcast. I'm Kerry Ransom. Today's episode is sponsored by Peak Planning and my friend Jeff Martin. They build high-performing teams for venture-backed growth companies and venture capital firms. They offer a facilitated leadership team session and tools to help create focus, alignment, and accountability amongst the team. Jeff and his crew are great at getting your team on board with a 3-year vision, 1-year plan, quarterly key results and objectives, and tools to keep you on track along the way. I have several friends that have successfully used Peak Planning. So if you want to learn more about it, feel free to message me and I can introduce you to Jeff. I'm super excited to have Sloane Keane with me on the podcast today. We were having a great little pre-show conversation, and we'll get into some of that for sure. But before we get to hear from Sloane, let me tell you a little bit about her. She is currently the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters of Orange County and the Inland Empire, a role that she's been in for about 3 years. And prior to that, she had several other years with the organization in senior development roles for them. And just for some orientation, Big Brothers Big Sisters is really one of the biggest, highest impact nonprofits in all of this area, providing mentoring and support to thousands and thousands of young children, and even as they grow into high school age throughout the area. Prior to that, she was in the business world, an advertising executive in several prominent media companies, including the Orange County Register. And like me, she's also a Big Ten graduate. And, you know, I can proudly say that my Hoosiers beat Penn State last year in football for one of the first times in forever. Sloane, it's great to have you on the podcast today. I'm sorry I had to put that little jab in there to kick things off.
Even the Hoosiers get lucky every once in a while. So
that's right. That's right.
In all honesty, thank you for being here. It's quite an honor.
Absolutely. So let's start with Big Brothers Big Sisters. And how did you initially decide and get involved there?
That's a great question. It's actually my favorite question. So I'm glad we're starting with that. I say I came in through the front door. As you eloquently put, my background was not nonprofit. I was an executive in advertising. I did go to school back east, Penn State, and moved to New York. And from New York, I moved back to the West Coast up to LA, and then, originally came home to Orange County. And through that whole process, the one thing that was pretty clear was I had traveled a whole lot. I had accomplished a whole lot. There's this quote that says, I was successful, but there was a part of me that felt, was I significant? And so I, as luck would have it, I came back to Orange County. I met Steve Churm. Most people know Steve Churm. He is amazing. I credit him, quite frankly. So if you're listening, Steve, for my career in nonprofit, he had introduced me to, at the time, someone who was just leaving UCI, who had given to me as my account to crack. I was working for OC Metro, one of the magazines that Steve was running at the time. And I literally went in to present, and she stopped me halfway through and said, I got to tell you, I just resigned. So I'm not your girl. But I said, all right, well, tell me where you're going. So she was leaving to become the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters. And she had just gotten her MBA at UCI, very, very smart lady, Melissa Beck. And we became friends. And she convinced me that it was right, or the time was right in my life to become a big sister, a volunteer for Big Brothers Big Sisters. And as you know, as the history would tell, that was in September, October, and Steve and OC Metro became part of the OC Register in January. And it was a crazy couple of months, and I became a big sister and just kind of fell in love with mentorship. And as looking back now, I could probably not have easily pinpointed. There were a few mentors that I had in my life that now, in hindsight, looking back, I credit for where I am today. Starting with my first grade teacher. I graduated high school at 17. I was young. And and the reason why is because I skipped kindergarten.
Mm-hmm.
But that story didn't start out so great because, I was a precocious kindergartner who got in a lot of trouble. I started teaching the class. I apparently had a lot of energy. So my mom picked up her daughter and a couple of red slips most often. And there was one day that the first grade teacher came to substitute teach. It's probably a month or two into school. And she said, I have an idea. I don't think your daughter is a problem child. I think she's bored. I think she's smart. I think she needs to move on to first grade. And I'm happy to have her in my class. And that was all it took. So Miss Neff, my first grade teacher, really helped identify at an early age that misbehavior is sometimes misdiagnosed.
Sure.
And so therefore my life started. And I often think that there were people, positive role models, somebody who intervened and changed your life. And that's what being a mentor is. So I became a mentor, and about 6 months in, I realized they needed help with, Big Brothers needed help with marketing and then with fundraising. And then I found myself in Cabo at a wonderful philanthropic tournament called the Stars and Stripes Tournament. Big Brothers has been part of that for over 20 years. And I was in Cabo as a volunteer on my own dime, and I met quite a few board members, had a wonderful time, realized that there was a career in nonprofit, particularly in fundraising, which was where my background was in sales and marketing. And I ended up joining the team 2 weeks after my experience in Cabo. And that was almost 9 years ago now.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Amazing. So talk about, whether it was the first sister that you mentored or other impact, that you feel like helped continue to remind you or validate for you that this is, such an important organization. What's a good story that you'd love to share?
So I have so many. So
Sure.
Wendy is my little sister, my mentee. So when we first met, Wendy, very shy in most of our youth that we serve, quite frankly, we serve between the ages of, we actually started serving at age 6. And then about 5 years ago, we expanded our service horizon to age 25. So I'll get into that a little bit later, but we stopped matching around age 17. So most of our youth are on the younger end. And, they're shy. And so I remember for the first 6 months, I remember talking to, once you get matched with Big Brothers, you have a professionally supported support specialist that's assigned specifically to you. So if Casey, you have a little brother, and every other week, then once a month for the first year, you have somebody to check in with, right? And I remember saying, I don't know if Wendy likes me. I don't know, am I making a difference? And, and it was probably the most profound statement. And she said, you're showing up consistently, Sloane. And that is the most important thing you can do for the youth that we're serving. And so this idea of showing up, right? Just showing up. And as an adult who, is used to achieving and accomplishing, and I mean, showing up is like, is the easiest thing to do, right? I think oftentimes people confuse, incredible impacts with just the ability to show up. And, and I have a great story that kind of dovetails on that. So one of this was a couple of years ago, I was having lunch with a big brother, and he's like, I got to tell you the best story. It probably sums up my experience as mentoring for this organization. And I said, great, shoot, tell me. And he said, so a couple of years ago, my little brother, like 6 months after being matched with him, was graduating from middle school. So he was in 8th grade. And I got this invitation to come to his graduation. And I thought, okay, I've met mom. I mean, I don't know her well. I don't know the family. And he's like, so, okay, sure, I'll show up. Right. And, as most of our volunteers, either kind of early professionals, kind of before family, or we've got a wonderful empty nesters who are kind of post family of our two sweet spots in terms of bandwidth and time for volunteering. And so he's a young professional and he's rushing to, he's 5 minutes late and he's like, he's embarrassed. He walks in, the auditorium's filled. And he looks up on stage and his little brother in the middle of the, song stands up and starts waving at him. And he's like, oh, hey, he's late. He's walking in and he looks to the right and he sees mom sitting there with the seat open right next to her. And, the little brother's gesturing from the stage and mom's gesturing to the seat next to him. And he goes, in this moment, he's like, I had this epiphany. It's like that seat has been open for his entire life. And he's like, and all I had to do was show up. So, the power of just showing up, just being there, is really remarkable. And, in the wake of COVID and people being so disconnected, the power of showing up consistently, I think is more important, frankly, now than it has ever been before.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think, somehow that got indoctrinated into me at a young age. And I was, grew up in a very loving, blessed house, but we had a family business. And so part of that was showing up day after day after day. It was 100 years old when I showed up in the world. And so it just became very clear to me that, part of what you do is show up. And I think that, to your point, is so critical. And I think for a lot of people, it's way easier to just write a check and sort of contribute that way, which isn't a bad thing, but I think you get also, that's why I'm such a big fan of your program, is that as the volunteer, you often get so much more by showing up, by participating, in some cases than maybe you realize. Far more than you're going to get by just, writing a check. And that time contribution or investment is so valuable. And part of what I do, I like to teach. I have a mother who's a teacher. I have a wife who's a teacher. So it's sort of in me. And I think that's another opportunity as well. You mentioned your first grade teacher. I think that's just such a gift. And, some of the classes I've taught over the years, I've told the students, I'm not the expert. I'm just the guide, and I'll get as much out of this by guiding you on this journey as you'll get hopefully from participating in it as well. And so I feel like, the mentor-mentee relationship is such a 360-degree one.
It's we don't want to discourage anyone from writing a check, but I do agree with you. Yes. I one of the things that originally attracted me to Big Brothers Big Sisters when I came back to Orange County was, there's equal parts, a lot of things that you need in life. Right. And so meeting new people and going to events and, God, after COVID, nobody puts heels on anymore, but, that was fun. That was exciting, but I also appreciated the fact that I was able to volunteer myself and to see some sort of personal interaction. So, yes.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned, now more than ever, the need to show up. So there'd been just amazing work being done by your organization and many others around the country at reducing the number. I think the term's called opportunity youth. And these are, people in that sort of late teens, early 20s that are not in school or not working and really contributing. But the, great work had been reducing these numbers across the country in the last number of years. And obviously COVID, I think, has unwound, at least temporarily, a lot of that work. So can you talk a little bit more about that and what you feel like the key needs are for your organizations and these risk communities?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So it's kind of nice. The script has flipped a bit. So the old jargon, the old vernacular was, we forever was at-risk youth. And so now the on the positive, on the script that we are flipping now is we're calling them at promise or opportunity.
Mm.
And I think what's great about just changing the vocabulary is words matter, so oftentimes kids get labeled, back to even my own experience. So the idea of at promise or opportunity, I think really captures the situation a bit more. Most people, certainly at this organization, and a mantra I believe in is that every child was born with potential. It's our unique opportunity to help ignite it and support it and watch it flourish and grow. But we certainly don't create it, and that is something that we've believed in for over a century at Big Brothers Big Sisters. But the last, I would say, 18 months has really taken. You're referring to the Measure of America report that came out kind of early on into COVID, that is entitled A Decade Undone. So based on even the preliminary research, which by the way, probably now is, I don't know if that's been, we got to circle back and see if that's been updated. But at that point, the research shows us, or was showing us at the time, that 10 years of progress in some of the most marginalized neighborhoods in terms of post-18 success, which is, college persistency, it's living wage jobs, self-sufficiency, has been unwound. Really, we took a major step back. And we see that in our own youth. I mean, anecdotally, most of our high school students, with schools being shut down for truly, this entire school year, and then, months of the school year before that, most of our families don't have the luxury to stay home. Like, working at home is not an option. So when all of a sudden school shut down, childcare was an issue. It was a problem. So we'll just start there before everyone wants to throw a computer into the mix. And hey, believe me, that helps. But initially what we saw with our high school students is they became the primary care person in their family. In addition to navigating their own school and their own issues and concerns and fears, right? They now became the primary care person in the family. And then, through no fault of the schools, it was just a reaction to being home. Most of our neighborhoods that we're talking about don't have fiber pulled under the households. So even if you have several devices per child, there's not enough bandwidth or connectivity to successfully connect, certainly via Zoom, successfully. And so what we found was a lot of our youth, ranging from elementary through high school, were just really struggling with connecting to school, with connecting to friends. A lot of high school students ended up getting part-time jobs just to kind of help contribute financially. So there was just an element of growing up overnight for kind of these at promise opportunity youth that were already kind of overwhelmed with life in many ways. So as we to go backwards to go forward, so one of the things we've hung on to as an organization is all the research shows that the impact of one positive role model in a child's life, in a young adult's life that's going through this, can make all the difference. It's not where you start, it's where you end, right? And so we were really leaning on our mentors to kind of lean in on every possible way. They were TikTok dance instructors and ad hoc science teachers, making glue and slime with household appliances or, household ingredients. Sometimes they were educational coaches, sometimes they were helping the teachers in the schools sort of reinforce and apply some of the education that they were, courageously trying to trying to do virtually, right? And sometimes our mentors, honestly, delivered critical needs. Sometimes they delivered food to the doorsteps, and during some really tough times, the shelter in place times, they were ding dong ditching and running back to their car. And I have another story kind of in that vein. I had a big sister who called me because we have a lot of standards in our program, and we're there to support them, to support our youth. But financially, that's sort of a different situation. We don't want that to be a stipulation for volunteerism. So we have some, standards on what you can and can't do. And this big sister called me, it was right in the middle. It was probably maybe November when the cases started to spike again. And she said, I did something and I just want to tell you. And I said, okay, what did you do? And she said, so I delivered a bag of groceries to my little sister last week. And she called me to thank me. And she said, gosh, you brought me an entire gallon of milk. And the big sister said, yeah, because you've got a big family. She goes, well, we're going to have to drink it all in one day. That's going to be really difficult. And she goes, oh, don't drink it all in one day. Like that, just, don't get sick. And the little sister said, no, you don't understand. We don't have a refrigerator. So big sister drove to Walmart, ordered in her car. It was delivered via like the back of her truck, and she's like, I dropped off a college fridge. I just did it and I don't care. And I said, all right, strange times, strange rules. So that just shows the scope and the magnitude of how our mentors have kind of leaned in over the course of the last 18 months. And there's no roadmap, it's just whatever needs arise, our mentors lean in. And that is what I see as moving forward. When people ask me, where do we go from here? And I'm like, we connect as humans and we take it one step at a time, and we are resilient, and we will heal, but we can't do it alone, for sure.
So on that note, how do you describe the needs that you think your organization, and particularly the little brothers, little sisters and their families will have, so that we don't take 10 more years to recover?
Well, I think that there are some really easy and quick ways as a community that we can lean in. Most of our youth, anyone, forget opportunity youth or any youth, you can't be what you can't see. So where we found some of our great partnerships is through some of our corporate mentorship and through our career exploratory programs. So one of I think the fastest ways to recovery, quite frankly, is having more companies, more corporations, more startups, quite frankly. I mean, COVID has sparked the entrepreneur in you, right? It's really shown you that what you thought you couldn't do, maybe you can. And I really think that, and on a positive note, there's going to be a lot of innovation coming out of COVID, quite simply because you had to. And so one of the programs that I'm really proud of that we really need to expand and grow over the next few years is the exploratory career programs. So starting in freshman and sophomore year, we have high school students that we take to corporate campuses, and it doesn't have to be a big corporation. I mean, it could be anything, but it's an opportunity to get some of these at-promise youth onto a professional campus. And it provides them with corporate mentors who have an opportunity to not only bring them into the career path that they've chosen, but then also help them talk and start to frame what post-18 looks like for them. The majority of our kids, quite frankly, 35% of our kids go to a four-year university. The remainder are looking more for career technical opportunities. That doesn't mean education is off the table. And quite frankly, education is the only way out. But it looks different for all of our youth. And so we as a mentorship organization need to focus on mentorship. So what we do and what we need to do more in the next couple of years is bring in partners that help us explore our clients, that help us give more opportunities to the youth that we're serving. And the unique, I guess, success factor for us is that the youth that get this opportunity have a built-in mentor to help them work through it and to help them keep consistently moving forward in a meaningful way.
Mm-hmm. Any thoughts on how, I mean, I have a lot of entrepreneurs in my audience. Any thoughts on how technology can help play a role in improving that connectivity or even scalability potentially?
Yeah. So, well, a lot of my colleagues who have kind of leaned into COVID and realized that, it is happening. So how do you embrace it? And how do you kind of harness the energy or the innovation, I will say. So technology has played a huge role. I mean, we went virtual overnight like everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And now that, we're working our way back into in-person, frankly, now, if you are interested in being a volunteer, we are back to in-person programming, but we probably won't completely leave the virtual world, as a lot of people have recognized. There is, I think, a place for both. The Zoom world has created a lot of opportunity. I mean, you and I even spoke. It's removed geographic barriers. It's convenient. So if you amplify your in-person experiences with virtual experiences as well, it creates more, I think, communication touch points.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for us, we will continue to kind of harness this level of technology. But as a career, here in Orange County, I mean, there are so many opportunities within the world of technology, and particularly for our young adults who have now, as we joked, what did they learn over COVID? Well, they learned how to maneuver technology in a way we never knew before.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that there are some opportunities for career exploration in those fields. Between computer programming to IT to video game production. I mean, there are so many very well-paying jobs. And I do think they are ripe for our young adults, and exposing them at an earlier age is the only way we start to build that future workforce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're spot on. So as you talk about that, kind of career exploration and education, whether it's, helping influence our primary education or it's even supplemental, we've got such an amazing group of nonprofit leaders here in Orange County. And I've had the pleasure of meeting and having several of them on the podcast as well. And I'm sure many of them are your friends also. How do you, because there's several groups that are all, also orienting in and around this. How do you collaborate around some of these topics?
So this is also, in my opinion, one of the positive effects of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I think, one of the, and I'm sure this isn't a nonprofit reality. I think it's a reality to most businesses, but there's a tendency to get verticalized. I think when you're, you got your head down and you're just doing what you do. And so the world stopping all at one time gave everybody, I think, a chance to pause and realize that, we really are better together. I mean, we all do uniquely different things. And if we do those uniquely different things together, we, that whole adage that, a splash and a few splashes makes a tidal wave, right? So in fact, I am overwhelmed with collaborative meetings, and there's great organizations. 1OC has done a great job in bringing together nonprofit leaders and community leaders and doing that almost on a weekly basis. I share a couple of things, but particularly in Anaheim, there's the ACT organization, which has for the last few years been strictly a nonprofit collaborative. And now that it's moved to the Anaheim Community Foundation, we're moving it to a multi-sector collaborative conversation. So we've got education, civic leaders, the Orange County Business Council, obviously the nonprofit sector, and so on and so forth. And so I think that there's just been a lot of opportunity to figure out how we can work together.
Mm-hmm.
And I, not that that wasn't a spirit of conversation before COVID, but with sort of the restrictions of being remote, and everyone challenged with connectivity, quite frankly, connecting to your clients. I've really seen that as a spark. And as an add-on to that, you're exactly right. I have some incredibly smart, talented CEO friends in the world of nonprofit. I mean, I have, I don't know if you've had Ramin Bashi from UCP, but Ramin she's a PhD, she's a medical doctor,
Mm-hmm.
an MD, excuse me. Reagan Phillips, she's the CEO of CASA. She's an attorney. My background is all in, marketing and sales. And so I think you're going to start to see there's just a really great sense of dynamic backgrounds in nonprofit leadership now. And that really will serve our communities as we are tasked with, quite frankly, one of the most important ROIs out there, right? The social ROI.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, as you think about, I mean, you mentioned ACT, and maybe that becomes a model for, the broader Orange County community. As you think about ways to cross-pollinate, you mentioned, doing more corporate exposure, more corporate mentorship. I mean, there's clearly this pressure on companies to really rethink their purpose, their mission. Do they have a obligation to more constituents than just their shareholders, which I think you and I would both argue they do. And so how do you think about inspiring the for-profit world to be more sustainable, purposeful in how they think about things, which should create more collaboration opportunities?
Yeah, I think, I feel like we're on our way. Again, a COVID aftershock, if you will, is, the idea of engagement and connection doesn't extend exclusively to our more, opportunity communities. I mean, truly, as a leader in any company right now, your number one job is to connect with your team, and one of the interesting dynamics that we've experienced, and I've spoken to, a lot of my board members who are in the for-profit sector and my colleagues in the nonprofit sector, is there's a lot of employment changing right now. There's a lot of seats changing, and one of the, I think the best explanations was from one of my board members who called it teaming. He said, there's a lack of team environment. I mean, it's hard to have accountability or connection to a mission, a company, a belief system, when we're so remote, when we haven't seen each other. And that's just a reality, right? So, so what if there was a way for a turnkey program that, could help employers connect directly with their staff and create volunteer opportunities, create a way to kind of connect and engage at the same time. And I think that's a space that we operate in, and something we can, quite frankly, offer. Whether it's just doing some virtual lunch and learns now, so talking about being a mentor, if it's the right time in your life to do that, and beyond that is even hosting a program. 20 to 40 team members at a time get an opportunity to one-on-one mentor a high school student. They get to see what the impact of one person can make, the sum total of their career success. How do you take that now and inspire somebody, a young adult, to then follow in your footsteps? I mean, that's powerful.
Sure. So I'm seeing an increasing interest. I spend a lot of time with the early career professionals myself, because I'm fascinated by this younger generation and the values that they have, which I'm inspired by every day. But I'm seeing this interest in what I'll call service learning, which I think creates these huge opportunities where a company, through whether it's volunteerism or partnership with organizations like yours, can help equip their teams with new life or other skills. So as you think about, mentors at Big Brothers Big Sisters, what kinds of life or other types of skills do you feel like you see them developing that are almost like service learning
Yeah.
opportunities?
Well, so because I find it fascinating, actually, it's a human experiment. So, because I sort of described earlier that typically the bandwidth for mentoring, at least in our program on the one-to-one capacity, it's what differentiates us in the world of mentoring. There's a lot of fantastic group mentoring, but we really focus on that one-to-one component.
Mm-hmm.
So again, the success factors we found over 100 years of doing this is sort of before you have kids, and then
Mm-hmm.
once you're an empty nester. So what we found in the pre-kid scenario is, there are all those things that being a parent teaches you: patience, understanding. Oftentimes, we hear a lot, I don't think this young mentee has ever said thank you. And then we kind of laugh. We're like, you don't have kids, right? My kid never thanks me for serving them breakfast in the morning, but it's an experience. It's a life experience that teaches you to look beyond yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you'll indulge me, this is not a rendition or an accusation on our current society, but, we have really become very focused on what we need to be successful,
Mm-hmm.
and sometimes to our detriment. And so what I found most is being a volunteer pre-family really lets you take a step back sometimes and look at things with a more holistic perspective. Because when you're in the middle of it, everything seems like a big deal. But sometimes when you step back with perspective, it helps you sort of reorganize your own life in the way that you approach issues and problems, whether it's professionally or personally. And so we've seen a lot of growth within our volunteers. Also, I've seen a lot of personal life growth within our volunteers. A lot of people end up getting married a few years into being a volunteer, and I wonder if they've learned things about themselves.
Sure.
And then post-family, we've got a lot of, which is an important thing for me to mention, we have a really cool program called Big Couples. So it's very popular post-family, but it doesn't have to be, as long as you have the bandwidth together. But as a very as a long-term couple, we will match you with a little boy, which is really important because outside of that particular situation, we match only same sex to same sex.
Mm-hmm.
And here's a little gratuitous plug. Women are 3 times more likely to volunteer. So I have almost 0 young girls waiting to be mentored, and I have hundreds of little boys. So if I can reach out to a few good men, Carrie, please. But I really think that post-8 or the empty nesters, if you will, are it's a way to come back together after you've had kids. That's
Sure.
really cool and unique. You get a chance to be more of like a grandparent and really look at parenting in a different way. And I think it's as uniquely interesting as before.
Yeah, super, super cool. So I mentioned it when I introduced you, and you've referenced it a couple of times. You had a history in the business world, as many of your other colleagues in the nonprofit leadership here also did. How did you feel like that helped you really as you took the reins of Big Brothers Big Sisters?
Well, I'll tell you, I've I've always had a fascination with leadership. And I say that in a way that I probably didn't know, quite frankly, what I was getting into until I said yes. And then of course I had no way of anticipating COVID, right? Which nobody did. But I've always had some really great bosses and mentors in my own professional life that have helped me probably mold the way that I lead. And I had an opportunity to make a lot of mistakes. So I always say, everyone asks me for advice, and I said, um, make every mistake once, right? Second time it's your fault. First time you're just, you're just pushing the envelope, right? And so I think it's the sum total of my experience in the professional environment, having experienced a lot of different leadership, quite frankly. And then having had the for-profit background helps me better frame to not only my own team, but to external investors that what we do isn't so different than what you do. The only difference is that instead of a tangible return on investment with products or services or whatnot, ours is seen in the future generation. And I think there's a lot of important lessons there, because you can't really do that well. I certainly can't recruit volunteers without having a strong marketing presence and brand. We can't efficiently support kids and run a P&L and HR issues. And, we deal with all the things that everyone deals with, and a board. So I say we're very close to a for-profit entity that has a board of directors as well. But I think all of that kind of adds to being a successful nonprofit CEO.
Great perspective. So we talked about your background in the media and advertising industry. I mean, as I think about that, it really is the core of storytelling. And I've been fairly critical in my time here, and I've been in Orange County for a long time, that I don't think we do a great job here of storytelling. And we have a lot of incredibly capable people in this community, multi-generations. I like how you frame the pre-kids and empty nest sort of as different life stages. But stories are what get people to engage, what get people inspired to act. So how do we do a better job here, in your mind, of storytelling? What maybe it's new media, or we don't have a great media foundation here. Any thoughts on things you feel like we as a community could do better
here in Orange County?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, you're right, having a background in media. I remember working for the Orange County Register. The first challenge was always, no, Orange County may be within the LA DMA, but we are a unique county in and of itself, right? So, so I do understand the unique challenges in media and certainly communication.
If you read the LA media, you really don't get the full picture of Orange County, right? And I think that's, we sort of have this unique challenge.
How do we do it better? It's a really good. I think it's an interesting challenge, even to, I don't know how interactive your audience is, but, I will tell you a couple of things. One is the world is, this is the opinion of Sloane only, but you're asking me, so I'll tell you, the world has become very soundbite oriented because of social media. So I will say in my career in I would call it communication, entertainment, I graduated college in 98. I moved to New York in 98. That was when the .coms came in with all the dot monies, and then the .bombs. I don't know if any of those checks were ever totally cashed, but there was, from that point on, the world of media has shifted and changed so significantly, right? And so some of the challenges, my own team have, when we're using social media, when we're trying to communicate storytelling, is it's very difficult to do in a soundbite society. You have to choose your words very, very carefully. Everything's hashtag now. I mean, it's not even full sentences, right? Like so we've gone from a narrative to literally a 3-word hashtag, no space, right? So I think there are some inherent challenges in that, but there's probably, like in all things, inherent opportunities. How do we do better micro videos? I mean, how do we do better kind of targeting audiences more? And is my thing, because I think if you're interested, you're fascinated, right? So I think the traditional way of servicing kind of the J&J model of just looking for eyeballs, right, is probably gone. Now, like target marketing, it's niche marketing, it's figuring out who your market is, and then those people are more willing to spend more time with you, I think. But yeah, I mean, I wish I had the silver bullet answer for you, but I think it's really it's an interesting question to pose.
It is. And I think I don't purport to have the answer. My instinct tells me we have to go back to local, and we have to go, sort of to the, how do we activate and engage almost as many people as possible to have their chance to participate, right? Whether that is to be a creator themselves, or feel like they get to co-create as part of it, so they have a sense of ownership. But it is it's an interesting challenge, because I think it's easy to probably easier here than most places to disengage, because you can sort of just retreat to your little small bubble in this bigger bubble.
But you just sparked a thought. So we recently did a sort of I wouldn't call it it's sort of an event, a pre-recorded event on kind of owning your own voice for just for our high school students and Leadership Academy and the youth that are mentoring for us right now. And, and it just struck me that, it might start at the heart of people understanding the value of storytelling. It might have been a little bit read out, quite frankly, with so much sound bites and so much, quick shots and quick media and quick hashtags that, just even understanding your own story is so valuable. And so that could be maybe, another possible area to really teach our youth to value their own story.
That's right.
So.
I like it. Well, Sloane, we're coming up on time. This has been a super fun and enlightening conversation. Thank you so much for that. We are, as you mentioned, you're starting to do some events back in person. What are you most excited about as we start to sort of get back together more easily now?
I am excited to start seeing my team every day. I mean, there's something that is, it's convenient, and, everyone's been in their PJs Zooming, but, I want to put some clothes back on. From I would say, like, a societal perspective, I am thrilled to be part of what I think is the solution to disconnection. I'm thrilled to start. We've had a lot of mentors who have been waiting for the opportunity to come back in person, and quite frankly, we have a lot of families who are like, we need in-person contact. Like we need our children to be connected personally. And so just the idea of kind of moving back into kind of this new normal is really exciting to me, because it's never ever been more important.
Okay, last question. Younger professionals, pre-kids, the group that we have talked about, if they're trying to get more involved in our community, they feel that pull to get more connected in, what piece of advice would you have for a young professional here today?
Well, I say, you can't fall off the floor. That's a Sloanism. if you're feeling disconnected, if you're feeling the urge to personally make a difference, if you want to see your community thrive, if you want to be part of building the next workforce of Orange County, Riverside, or San Bernardino, and you want to personally be part of that, then look us up. See what we have to offer. Come kick our tires. I say, it's a mutual relationship, but it starts with interest. And I have, if you're willing to let me wax philosophical for a second, there's a Gandhi quote that I leave almost all of my recruitment meetings with. And it's the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. And for me, most of the young professionals right now are really trying to find themselves. And I think it's the best path to success.
So powerful. Well, Sloane, thank you so much for joining me and sharing so much perspective on the importance of mentoring youth and the values that we get from doing that. Your perspective and wisdom is super valuable. And thank you also for all the leadership and amazing contributions you're making to the communities here in Orange County and the Inland Empire.
Well, the pleasure was all mine. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Operate Podcast. If you like this conversation, as a favor to me, you can rate us, review us, or subscribe, or tell your friends. You can also reach out to us on Twitter at Operate Podcast. Until next week, get out there and operate.